Whether you're looking for answers to specific life questions or seeking to become the best version of you possible, welcome to the Mental Breakdown and Psychreg podcast, where we offer insight, information, and strategies based upon research and years of practice as clinical psychologists. So sit back, have a listen, and get connected with our hosts, Dr. Berney Wilkinson and Dr. Richard Marshall. Welcome back. Richard, we are back.
That has new meaning now.
It does.
Welcome back. Right.
It does. So today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the experiences we've had over the past week or so. You know, it was just under a week ago, just a little short of a week ago, that we came in and recorded podcasts for this past week, and we weren't sure what we were going to talk about on our big show that we do on our big podcast that we do on Saturdays. But nature provided for us. Nature gave us a topic to talk about.
Be careful what you wish for.
That's right. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of our experiences and sort of give some strategies and some ideas and some perspectives for folks who are...
What is the topic?
Surviving or returning to life after Irma.
And for those of you who don't know...
It's so interesting to me, because today's just going to be a talking day. Right, we don't have articles to talk about. We're not nothing like that. We're gonna just kind of talk today, but it's amazing to me. It's interesting to me how names take on a different meaning as soon as a hurricane has that title.
Yeah, that's right.
Irma.
Andrew,
right.
Donna,
exactly.
Sandy. Mm-hmm. That's right. And now
Katrina.
Irma. Yeah, Katrina.
Yeah,
best example.
And Charlie, Ivan.
Who would ever name a daughter Katrina?
Not now.
I might have before, but...
Yeah. I think that it's...
A week ago, we were anticipating, right? We were still watching the storm, knowing that it was headed to Florida.
Right.
Okay,
right.
So I was trying to think of...
And we joked a little bit about...
We never will again.
I might.
You might.
Joke.
Right.
About what would happen and about it coming in, whether we were going to be here this week or not.
Whether we were going to be here at all.
So,
no, we joke about it now because the worst of the storm. I almost said it's behind us. It's not behind us.
Right. The storm
itself is the high winds are gone for now, but there's a massive cleanup occurring.
Yeah.
And reconstruction.
Right.
You know, getting electricity back on and that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah, I'll see if I can. We're recording this on Friday, the Friday before we're going to post it tomorrow on the, what's tomorrow, the 16th, September 16th. And I'm going to see if I can get and sort of insert some of the pictures on the YouTube video, see if I can insert some pictures that we've taken of the area around. But it's pretty, we got hit pretty hard. But yeah, let's go back first. Did you know? And I didn't know this going ahead of time because I don't watch the news. I don't watch TV, really. I watch programs on Netflix and stuff like that.
Yeah, we don't. You and I don't really watch TV.
I don't watch the news. I don't read the newspaper. Not because I'm anti-news, but because there's just so much in there that gives me a headache that I just choose to avoid that in my life. But in doing so, there were things that I did not know about Irma. For example, I did not know that Irma was the largest storm, the strongest hurricane in the open Atlantic.
Right. Largest.
The largest and the strongest.
Right.
185 mile an hour winds.
At one point.
Hundreds of miles.
170 miles in diameter.
Right.
This storm, Andrew.
And I heard that at some points it was even bigger than that.
Right. In 1992, Andrew.
Right.
Came through the southern tip of Florida, Miami and Homestead in that area. It was a big Air Force base there. Absolutely demolished those areas. And what people were looking at was a picture of Andrew compared to a picture of Irma.
It was like comparing a dime to a $50
dinner plate.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a huge difference.
Massive, yeah, at least twice, if not 3 times the size.
So Andrew came ashore in the southern tip of Florida. Irma covered the entire state.
Right.
It went beyond the borders.
Right, on both sides.
Of Florida.
Yeah.
Right. And so no matter where it came ashore, it was going to devastate large parts of Florida. And as it turns out, it went up the spine. It went up the center of Florida.
Yeah.
Covering just both coasts. I mean, rarely do you get damage in Miami and Tampa, because they're on
Miami
coast.
and Tampa and
Jacksonville
and all these.
And Tallahassee.
And part of this is why I try why I don't bother too much with news and things like that, because leading up to the storm, there were reports that, she is going to take this little dip and she's going to go east. And we actually joked with a guy that we were talking to from England the week before.
We were going to send
that it was going to go that way, and
we were going to send it to England.
That's right,
the ocean.
And then there was reports that it was she's going to go further west, and she's going to miss us and go out into the Gulf, which would have been terrible for
Houston.
For Texas and possibly Louisiana and those states. But no, she spun right up and basically went straight up. Florida.
We talk about not watching the news, but of course the news was on. My family was watching it just prior to the arrival of the hurricane, and they have now what are called spaghetti paths.
Yeah.
And the spaghetti paths these are the possible paths that this could take, and I mean it's scattered across the state.
I always look for the one that has it going south, because it never goes south. But it's like, hey, you know what? Who knows? If we're just throwing out all the possibilities, maybe.
Right. Yeah, it's going to go. Yeah.
So it's
anyway.
That's why I don't
but a
watch
week
the
ago,
news.
we're sitting here waiting for this massive storm, and we kept getting told this is a different kind of storm.
Right.
The winds were so strong that this storm had the potential, because of its size and its speed, the wind speed. This storm had the potential to create devastation, catastrophic results for large parts of the state.
Right.
We didn't have any comparison, and the authorities kept saying, we don't have anything to compare this to because we've never had a storm like this before.
Right.
It was a unique event.
Right. And the other problem, the interesting combination is that the winds were so strong.
Right.
It was so large, but it traveled so slowly.
Right.
Over the days leading up to its arrival, it was traveling anywhere from 14 to 16 miles per hour. It's like...
It'd be here in a week.
Because it was... that is so true, because initially it was going to be here Friday, and then, it's going to be here Saturday afternoon, Sunday morning, and it didn't arrive until Sunday night into Monday morning.
Right. It was from midnight to about 5.
And so one of the things we want to talk about today is that anticipation. For so many people, it created so much anticipatory anxiety, so much stress leading up to it, because it's sort of that holding on to, at any point now it's going to hit. Because you can't avoid it. You're not going to get out of the way. I know some people who went up to northern Florida and even into Georgia, and as you said, they still got hit to some extent.
And normally we're the evacuation zone.
Right.
In other words,
Central Florida.
Florida. People come from the coasts. Because the other issue is coastal flooding.
Right.
Because there's some meteorological events that create flooding along the coastlines. So people from the coasts come inland. Well, now the hurricane came with them.
Yeah.
It was also in the center of the state. So it was almost a Murphy's Law sort of thing, that anything that could go wrong did.
Right.
The only thing that didn't, and we were all primed by Houston.
Right.
And that was the other thing that was unique about Irma. No, besides Irma itself, we had been watching the news about Houston and the massive flooding there and the catastrophic flooding in Houston. And it was the same kind of problem, is that the storm came ashore and stopped. It stalled over Houston. And so it rained and rained and rained and rained, creating flooding in the city.
Right.
So we're all watching that, and suddenly, within days, Irma arrives. This massive storm arrives, and we're thinking, we're already primed because of Houston.
Yeah.
So
it's bad. And while Murphy's Law certainly was at play to some extent, there were some other things that actually worked out very favorably for us.
We dodged the bullet.
As Irma was approaching, she was still at Category 5, which is massive. Lucky for us, and I don't know the damage in Cuba.
I have to check because our Cuban brothers took one for us.
They did, because as Irma was coming in, she clipped the northern portion of Cuba, which took a lot of steam away.
Which is the mountainous
area, right?
And when the storm hit those mountains, it started to break up a little bit and slow down.
Right. So she went from a 5 to a low 4 to an upper 3.
Right.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah.
Right.
So by the time she got to us in Central Florida, she was down to 1.
Yeah. As it started to make landfall in southern Florida, because it came up the southern tip of Florida.
Right.
And as it travels across land, it starts to break up and slow down. Over the open ocean, it collects more warm air, and it accelerates. Over land, it's cooler, and it starts fragmenting. It starts breaking up.
Right.
So yes,
Cuba. So we were very lucky with that, and so again, while Murphy's Law sort of was at play with a lot of things, we were very lucky there.
Right.
And so. Again, that anticipation, that anticipatory anxiety, that anticipatory stress. And I'm mentioning this kind of specifically here because Jose is out there. And I'm not talking about a Cuban brother, as you said. I'm talking about the next hurricane. Just recently, I heard this morning.
Change directions
and maybe heading here as well. And so...
There is a possibility that Jose could land in Florida.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you look at the spaghetti map,
it's back out in the open ocean.
Right.
And whenever that happens, if it comes ashore and it's not moving too fast, there are always problems with hurricanes. But when this one now is back out in the open ocean, the ocean's warm, and it's going to pick up speed, and it's going to head in our direction.
And I don't know the size of Jose, but... it does make me think back to 2004 when we had, the crisscross of the 4 hurricanes that really kind of crisscrossed right over Central Florida, right over our area with Charlie and, what was it, Charlie and Ivan and...
I can never remember the names.
I can't remember the names. All I remember is Charlie because he was the first one. Right. So it's Francis?
That was one of them.
Yeah.
Charlie, Francis, Ivan.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah, Francis, because it goes boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl. So Charlie would be C. So Francis F would have been a girl. So I think it was Francis. Yeah. So I said girl, female name, boy name, male name, female name, not
That's
boy,
okay.
girl.
We named it.
But there's guys named Francis.
With this.
So.
Well,
just saying.
One is IS and one is ES.
That reminds me of the movie Back to School. Not Back to School. Summer School. Did you see that movie?
No, of course not.
I think Mark Harmon was in that. That was a good movie. You should watch it. So we have that sort of brewing as a possibility. And so, again, the anticipatory anxiety, please be careful that you don't immerse yourself in the news again, and start building up that anxiety again.
People are going to.
Oh, they're going to.
They're going to start watching the news again. And
as soon as they have electricity.
Yeah,
we'll
if you have electricity, people will begin to watch the news again, and they will begin once again to become anxious.
Right. So you really, well, we're going to get to some strategies in a few minutes, but I really encourage you to be cautious of that. Don't get into that pattern again because it's just going to ratchet up the anxiety.
Right.
So Irma hit on Sunday night. And
Cinderella, about midnight.
That's when, interestingly enough, it's right when the eye of Irma, which was supposed to be off the west coast of Florida, the last I had seen, actually went right over our houses.
That's right. It shifted. It was headed for St. Petersburg.
Right.
The Marco Island, and then just a little bit north of that was St. Petersburg.
Right.
And it was headed for St. Petersburg. And we were hoping that it would even go out more into the Gulf, a little bit farther west. Instead, it came a little bit east.
Right over us.
And came right over our city.
Mm-hmm. And so again, the last thing I had seen was that it was going to be out there, and I was thinking,
no big deal.
Right.
It's that far away.
Now, but on the east side of a hurricane is the more problematic side, because that's usually where the stronger winds and more rain and all that kind of stuff are. But it's the farther away, of course, the better.
Right.
And so leading up to it, I will be honest, I will be honest, I wasn't extremely stressed about the storm to begin with, because
I'm smiling now.
What?
As he says that. Well, Florida has 30-some million residents. 30-some million were worried. Only one wasn't.
I don't, for whatever reason, I don't get flapped up about hurricanes and stuff. In 2004, when those hurricanes came through, we sat out on the front porch and watched as the storms went by, and watched the trees buckle and break and stuff. But we
lashed ourselves to a tree so we could watch the storm. And there were movies about people like,
I sat in my rocking chair.
Yeah, but you had to nail it to the porch.
It rocked by itself. It was weird. But I wasn't...
not to get caught up in it.
Right.
That's why.
Right.
Okay. And I'm the same way. I know not to sit in front of a TV for 10 and 12 and 15, which what most people did is they have the TV on, and there's this constant, this drumbeat.
Right.
Storms, to be careful, because catastrophe. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to us. And you hear that over and over and over and over. And you're bound to feel anxious after 24 hours of constant news coverage. It was a Saturday.
Because they couple that with images of the Virgin Islands and everything that says, well, look at what it did here. And,
right. And this was on Saturday and Sunday. So for those of us, for those of you, because I'm not one, who watch a college football, you couldn't watch a college football game because every channel was hurricane news. Okay. Yeah. Sunday was the professional football games. And you couldn't watch it, first of all, because you didn't have electricity, but also because all that was on was hurricane news.
Right.
And so your normal routines are completely thrown off, but you're inundated, I almost said flooded, you're inundated with hurricane information.
Right.
And it increases your anxiety and your stress.
Yeah.
You know not to do that.
Right. And having lived in Florida my whole life, we see a lot of storms.
Oh yeah, yeah. We have them every day.
Hurricane Irma was a spectacle. Yeah, it was different. Yeah. But we have thunderous thunderstorms.
We have dangerous
on an almost
electrical
daily basis.
Storms every day in the summertime.
Right.
With winds and rain and lightning and
they hit and they're gone.
Right.
And it's getting to be a little bit less predictable. But there was a time when it was 3 p.m. At 3 o'clock. Right. Every day you had a thunderstorm. It lasted about 45 minutes to an hour and a half or so, and then it was gone, and it was back and sunny again. Almost like clockwork.
Yeah, when we first moved here from Pennsylvania, it was almost comical because we would say, "Okay, it must be 3 o'clock," and because it was clockwork.
Right.
And and then it would stop raining, and the sun would come out, and you could see the steam rising from the asphalt, and it was over. Okay.
Right. As a kid...
up north it would rain for 3 weeks at a time.
Right. As a kid, it was, school got out, you got home as quick as you could before it started raining, and then by the time your parents got home from work so that you could go out and play, it had stopped.
Everything was dry.
It was done.
The sandy soil here soaks up the rain. There are no puddles in Florida.
Not too many.
When I first came here, there was a question on an IQ test. What is a puddle? And this child looked at me very confused, no idea what I was talking about, because they don't have puddles in Florida.
Yeah. We're starting to now. It's in the way that the environment is changing, but
not allowed to say that in Florida.
It's not. I didn't say climate change. I said climate is changing.
Climate is changing.
We're not allowed to say climate change. So, but we don't work for the government, so we're allowed to.
I do.
I'm not going to tell you where our address is, though. But getting back to the point, I wasn't very overly anxious about the storm leading up to it. And so, even as the storm was hitting, I find storms like that fascinating. Because think about what has to happen to generate 185 mile an hour winds. Now, we didn't have 185 mile an hour winds here in Florida. But we had
96 to 100.
Think about...
I can.
It's amazing to me what nature does. And so, and the other thing that's really interesting about hurricanes is there's relatively little electrical activity. There's relatively little thunder and lightning. I think throughout the evening, we saw maybe 2 lightning strikes, but that's it.
Right.
We think they were lightning strikes. They may have been transformers blowing. We're not sure. But that's it, because we really didn't hear any thunder.
You couldn't.
So full disclosure, my son and I, we went outside a couple times, and we were watching. We partially because we wanted to make sure that everything outside was okay, but it was raining. It was really windy. Yes, but this was before things were really kind of blowing around and getting out there and everything. But as it kept building, we would take little videos of the trees and everything. Right. And then midnight, almost at the strike of midnight, we lost power.
Right, that's right. It was like
we thought we were done with it. Because, dude, I thought, again, the last thing I saw was that the eye was going to be off the west coast. So I was like,
we're okay.
We're good.
I thought we were
There's no way that
we were approaching midnight, and the eye looked like it was going to be out in the water and probably moving quickly away because it's out in the water, pick up speed, and it would move away, a little bit west and not do too much damage.
Yep. But instead, we lost power at midnight, and that's when it began.
Right. And that's when the storm really hit.
Yeah.
It was from 12 o'clock on.
Yeah. Right. But I went to sleep at 12:15, so I missed all the good stuff.
But you got up. What time did you wake up?
I woke up a little early that day. Not as early as usual.
See, I woke up around 2.
Oh, so yeah, I did.
So it was right in the middle of it. I was right in the middle of the storm because everybody else was asleep. And so I got up and was wandering around the house making sure everything was intact.
Yeah. No, I didn't get up. I got up just as the sun was coming up.
Oh, okay.
and went out and saw
the devastation.
Yeah. Now, luckily, our house, everything was fine. You know, and most of the houses around us, everything was fine. But the again, I'll see if I can include some pictures in the YouTube video. But trees down, limbs and stuff all over the place. So we spent all of Monday cleaning up.
Right.
Picking up shingles, roof shingles that were on the ground, and because you had those numbers. What was it at 95 miles an hour? It starts ripping roof shingles off.
Right.
But just above that, it gets a little bit worse.
You get to 100. We were at 100 miles an hour, essentially 90 some miles an hour. We were at 100 miles an hour. At 100 miles an hour, anything that can break off a tree, anything that's weak, anything that's dead, it's all going to be in your yard, okay? Because these trees, these large oak trees, are just whipping back and forth. I mean, these huge, massive trees.
I wish that I could have gotten good video of it, but there was no light.
It always happens at night.
But it was the trees. You could watch just their silhouette, and it would go, and they would just swirl.
Do you remember that tree?
It wasn't a tornado, but they would just swirl.
Remember that tree in Harry Potter?
Yeah, the Whomping Willow.
That's all the oak trees looked like that.
See, you referred to a movie that time. It wasn't me. Good
everybody
job.
saw Harry Potter. But that's what it looked like. These trees were just being whipped like that tree in Harry Potter. And it's hard to imagine because they're so large, but that's what pulls them out of the ground.
Yeah.
Okay, there's that movement. But many of them, because there's this circular movement of the tree, they snap.
Yeah.
And they'll snap off halfway up. So,
yeah.
But I got out and went out and walked into the street and looked down the street, and there was a tree going across the street.
Yeah.
One of those large oak trees had fallen and fell into the street, fortunately, and didn't fall into their house, but it fell into the street. So one tree did fall in a house, and it cut the house in half.
Oh boy!
It dropped in the middle of the house, and there were two sections, and the cars in the house were under the tree.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a mess. I mean, I did.
Well, I have a friend where a tree fell on, and you know, there's so many sort of grades. There's a spectrum with which the damage, under which the damage could happen. You know, for some, my brother, for example, a tree fell on his house, but it just sort of, another tree kind of caught it, and so they're just kind of leaning up against the house. It's like, just gonna rest here a little bit. And then you have all the way up to that, you know, where the tree just kind of goes in and just kind of
if it falls,
slices it in half.
Right. But yes, at 100 miles an hour, you could have some shingles or some siding, you know, could loosen. If it's loose to begin with, it could get worse. But at 110, you start to get into serious problems.
Yeah.
And 120 or 130, it's devastating. I mean, it'll tear your roof off.
Yeah.
You know, so the difference between 100 and 125, it doesn't sound like much, but it's an enormous difference in terms of the destructive capacity of those winds. Yeah. And at 150 miles an hour, you're going to lose water, and you're going to be essentially isolated for a while. You're not going to have anything. You're not going to have electricity. You're not going to have water, because everything gets damaged.
Yeah. So. Now, in speaking of some of that, you know, I think it's the you know, the most devastating thing after the storm. You know, you have the work that begins to recover.
Right.
And you have all the cleanup. You know, I mean, you just drive down the roads and there's just piles of leaves and tree debris, you know, 4 feet high on both sides of the road as you're driving down. But, you know, you lose electricity, and there's no rhyme or reason to why and where electricity is lost. I know of people who have not had electricity, you know, as we're recording this on Friday, they still have no electricity. Since Sunday night. So since Sunday night, they haven't had electricity, so that's 5 days. But the people across the street have electricity. And it's difficult to understand some of those.
Wouldn't you love to see the electric grid for our county? I mean, because it makes no sense.
It would look like that spaghetti.
It would be a spaghetti. No, it would almost look like the nervous system, you know, where... Because you're right, you can be beside somebody or across the street from somebody. One has power, one doesn't.
Yeah, but we've been fortunate because we've had, you know, wonderful linesmen coming from Georgia and North Carolina and other states coming down to sort of help, and they're working 16-hour shifts, and they're working their tails off
it's
trying to get everything back.
Unbelievable how quickly power has been restored. And again, for those of you who don't have power, we understand and we apologize.
Yeah.
You can come to my house if you need a cold shower. No, hot shower.
Yeah, you have it hot now.
Yeah, we got power yesterday.
You got power after 4 days. I got power after 2 days. And, you know, the office got power back the next day. So.
But we don't have internet.
We didn't have internet.
Yeah. We don't have any at home.
You don't have any yet. Right. And so yeah, there's two different systems, because one is the electrical system, the other is the cable system. So it's...
But our message is, as we talk about, we were talking about the anticipation, okay, that what these storms do is you have days to worry before they arrive.
Right.
And then you have all this stuff that happens after they have arrived.
Right.
And the cleanup and all that. So we want to talk about that, about what the anticipatory anxiety does and what the anxiety after the fact does. So you have, it's in 3 stages. Anticipatory anxiety. If you can imagine what the stores looked like in Florida on Saturday.
There are people fighting over cases of water.
Physically fighting.
Yeah.
I mean, hitting each other, punching each other. It's worse than Black Friday.
And somebody said this, and I think it's so true. Many times, these are people who don't drink water. Like, they probably haven't bought a case of water ever. And they're fighting over cases of water.
Right.
It's
Anyway, you have anticipatory anxiety, and you grocery store shelves are you couldn't buy batteries, you couldn't buy a generator, you couldn't buy bread, people just emptied the stores on Friday and Saturday and early Sunday morning. There was nothing left to buy. There was no gasoline.
Right.
People were lining up for gas. I mean, everything. I don't know where people were going, because you couldn't go anywhere, but they were buying gasoline, putting it in their cars. So you have all that worry, all that anxiety that's created prior to the arrival of the storm. Then you have the storm itself, which heightens the anticipatory anxiety, because now it's a frightening event. I mean, for 5 or 6 hours, you don't know whether you're going to survive or not, because almost your roof could be ripped off, trees could fall on your house. So you really don't know. So then there's that high anxiety that occurs during the event. Then you get up in the morning and you see the devastation and the massive cleanup, and you don't have power, you have no electricity, the houses get hot, everything is steamy, the next day. So you have it comes in 3 phases. The anxiety comes in 3 phases. And I guess our message here is, don't underestimate the influence, the effect that these 3 types of anxiety are going to have on you, and do something about it. Don't let it overwhelm you. We always say, when we're working with children or teenagers, you control your emotions. Don't let your emotions control you. That's our message. Well, this is one of those times where you can't let anxiety, either before, during, or after the storm, you can't let the anxiety overwhelm you. You have to do something about it.
Yeah. So you make preparations, and you do the things that you need to do. You don't go outside and play in the hurricane, even though
most people don't.
Was okay.
You know who used to do that? John Muir, M-U-I-R. He was an explorer and artist who went there. Muir Woods out in California. He went out and did some of the early explorations in California. He used to climb. He was like you. I just love nature. Okay. He would climb trees during a thunderstorm so he could see it at that level. And there were drawings of him hanging onto the top of a tree during these violent thunder and lightning storms. Most people say, don't go under a tree. He would climb trees during a lightning storm. And you remind me of John Muir.
Well, I don't
Muir
do that.
Woods.
I don't do that. I don't climb trees. I mean,
I'll check with your mother and see if you ever did.
I don't think I did. But it is that those 3 types of anxiety: the anticipatory, the experiential, and then the recovery. Those 3 types of anxiety really take a toll, and you're right, we can't underestimate that.
I'm pretty good at controlling my emotions. I mean, you and I have had lots of training in how to do that. During the storm itself, you worry. I mean, even you do.
I went to sleep.
I couldn't squint.
No. I don't. I didn't. What I was worried about is, I was worried. I was worried that something was going to get broken that I would have to fix.
Right. I was going to say.
I was like, I want to fix stuff.
Well, you've lived through a lot of hurricanes.
Yeah.
But even this one was different for you.
Yeah, this one was big.
Okay. But that middle part, that during the storm itself, is a scary time. Okay. And then it's depressing. I mean, I love the 3 phases of, because the cleanup and the loss of electricity, what the loss of electricity does in this day and age. Because in Florida we depend on these devices, air conditioning and refrigeration.
And I think that's one more thing that we should talk about before we kind of get into our ways to recover. Is that I don't remember what program I watched. I don't know if it was a fictional program or if it was a documentary or something, but they were talking about what would happen next, or what would happen if, and one of the things that they were talking about, you know what it was? They were talking, okay, now it's funny. They were talking about past cultures and previous, cultures who had attained a level of technology that may have been much greater than we thought. And they talk about like Atlantis and some of those kinds of things, but not in a mythical way, but from the perspective that when a culture reaches a certain level of technology, we become dependent on that technology.
That's right.
And what happens is if there's a catastrophic event, that removes our ability to manage and to use that technology,
right,
it leads to significant loss of life, significant loss of the social structure.
That's right.
And so when we think about things like this, where you lose power, electricity for a long period of time, you start to realize how dependent on electricity you really are.
There's a reason why Florida and Las Vegas and the desert Southwest, Phoenix, and those places weren't developed until very recently.
Right.
Because you couldn't, it was very difficult to live in these places.
Right.
I mean, when the temperature gets to 118 degrees, you got to be pretty healthy to survive 118 degrees. If you're sickly or you're elderly or, you know, that's life-threatening heat. And the same in Florida. These are life-threatening storms, and you need this technology in order to live in these locations. Take the technology away, and you're very vulnerable and very exposed to the elements.
Right. Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, and so in that program that they were talking about, they were saying that there may have been these other cultures who had great technology, but because of a volcano or because of something that happened, that their ability to use that technology disappeared, and there was a great, almost not really an extinction, but there was a great loss of life and culture, and so these people had to integrate into cultures that were less sophisticated technologically, and you can see how that can happen when you have these kinds of experiences, because
if we didn't have the ability to bring all these electrical workers quickly, I mean, they were lined up in Georgia, just waiting for the bell to sound, so that they could invade the state, and it was like a colony of ants. I mean, they just descended on Florida and repaired these things. If you couldn't do that, a lot of people would die in the elements. The other thing to remember is in Florida, all the animals are here to kill you.
Right.
Snakes and spiders and alligators and all that stuff. They would all start to take over. I mean, because now all these critters that we have contained in places would be released.
Right.
And they're all out doing what they want to do. Yeah. So when you take away the technology, you become very, very vulnerable to the heat, to the elements, mosquitoes and insects and snakes and alligators. I mean, we had friends who, sadly, their house flooded. They opened the refrigerator. They had 19 inches of water in their house. There was a snake in the refrigerator. They opened the refrigerator, there's a snake in there. It's probably a black snake, black racer or something, just trying to escape. But
still, that's scary.
Tadpoles in their bathtub.
Yeah.
I mean, so take away the technology, and it is interesting. You think of Egypt or Atlantis or the Mexican civilizations, because you couldn't repair them quick. Today we have the ability to repair things quickly. Right. If you didn't have that ability to repair it quickly, because there was nobody to send you more supplies.
Because we're spread out so much that one group gets hit hard, the other group can come and support, but they didn't have that in central Mexico.
Didn't have it in those civilizations. You had pockets of civilization that were isolated. So
we know that people are still out of power, and we know that people will be without electricity for a little while still. But we also know that those that know how are working as quickly as they can to repair all of that, and so
it's been really
we do feel for you, and please let us know if there's anything that we can do to help out with anything. That's. But of course, if you probably need that help, I'm not sure that you'd be listening to the podcast right now, because
you wouldn't have any electricity.
When we didn't have electricity, I couldn't even. You can't send text messages. You can't send.
Our cell phones won't work.
Yeah,
AT&T must have had a tower down somewhere.
Yeah,
because other providers seem to be working.
Some of them seem to be
working. AT&T wasn't, which suggests that a tower was damaged at some point.
Yeah. So and we say that not jokingly. It's we know that, again, things that we take for granted disappear. So. But let's talk about a little bit.
Now, what should you do?
What we can do now.
Right. What should you do now that you've been through this horrific experience? What should you do now?
Right. So the first thing we need to do is, in light of the anticipatory stress, the experiential stress, and then the aftermath stress, the first thing we got to do is start reducing stress.
Right. Yeah, and to do that, you need to separate from the event. There's a reason why soldiers, for example, in World War II, they would be sent to the front line, they would fight a little while, and then they would be brought back behind the lines to recover. Right. You have to separate from the event.
And so that means unplugging.
Right.
You can't keep watching. And we saw this after 9/11.
Yes.
People just kept watching that horrific images over and over and over and over again, and it just traumatizes. So, and this is from people that were, just for example, here in Florida, not even connected to anything in New York at the time that it happened.
Right.
And so when you're plugged in, you're watching. I mean, if we want to think about it this way, you're watching the worst of the worst. You're seeing the greatest extent of the devastation, and it's being internalized. And so you got to unplug so that, because in a minute we're going to talk about dealing with your own stuff. You got to unplug so that you stop dealing with other people's stuff. You got to stop dealing with stuff that you have no control over.
Right. You have to remove yourself from the event. You can't keep triggering and triggering and triggering this stress response. Right. You're reproducing the anxiety, and you want to do just the opposite. Right. You have to step away. And today, we're not out in the elements. We're watching them on TV, but it's still producing the anxiety. So even though it's virtual, not real, it's still producing real anxiety by watching it on TV. And I think your 9/11 example is just, when you see those planes hit those towers, or you see the towers come down, it creates that response in you every time you watch it. And you want to stop that response. You have to stop the response from occurring. Right. You have to step away from it.
Right. Now, number two is, as you may be surrounded or feel surrounded by the devastation and all the negative things and all the loss and everything, it is important to think about the positives. Think about, what is still here, what you still have, and the fact that you're still alive, even if it's at that most basic of a root. You have to think about things as many positives as you can.
When we were anticipating this storm on Saturday and Sunday, we were told that it would probably come ashore at 130 miles an hour. Right. 130 miles an hour is devastation. It's catastrophic. And I told my son, we went out on the porch, and I said, look, there are two things we have to worry about. One is you don't want a tree to fall on the house, and you don't want to lose your roof. Right. At 130 miles an hour, either is possible.
Both of those things are likely.
Either is likely, okay? That's the kind of damage you're talking about. I said, if those two things don't happen, we can deal with anything else. Right. So when you say, think of the positives, as difficult as it is to be without air conditioning for 4 days, as difficult as it is to ride through the storms, you have to look at the positive and say, those two things didn't happen. Right. I can clean up the mess. Right. I can live without air conditioning. I can handle a cold shower. Everybody's alive and the house is still standing. Right. Look at the positive. Yeah. I mean, and everybody can. Yeah. If you're alive, you can start looking at the positives. Right. Because a lot of bad things can happen in these storms.
Right. Now, the third thing is, you have likely been spending a whole lot of time with your family lately, and here in our area, I'm not sure what it's like outside of our area, though I know that a couple of the neighboring counties is the same. School's been out all week. They're not going back until Monday or Tuesday of next week, and so they were released. School was canceled on last Friday.
Yeah, Thursday and Friday in some places.
For some schools, yeah. So they were out last Friday and all this week, and then they're going to go back to school next week. So you've been spending a lot of time cooped up, hot, probably hungry, eating junk food and all kinds of stuff.
Drinking water that you normally don't drink.
With irritable kids, parents, loved ones, etc. It is really important that you as you're thinking about the positives, it's really important that you find some ways to spend some positive time with your family. Right. Because, you got to get that connection back. You got to do something that's enjoyable, something that's relaxing. I know that it's difficult. I know that it's hard to do that during this time, but you really need to find that time to do that.
Yeah, the one, and people are saying this now. The worst thing about losing your electricity is you can't do anything.
Right.
I mean, I guess you could read, if you could tolerate the heat. But once you've lost electricity, you just sit in a room.
Yeah.
And you can play board games for a while, but everything gets old after a while. Plus, you're hot, you're tired, you're irritable, and you're stressed.
Right.
So it's almost the worst of circumstances.
Right.
Okay. And so when it's over, try to reconnect in positive ways.
Right.
Look for ways to do things that are a little bit more enjoyable.
Right.
They're kind of the normal things that you do.
Right.
I'm going to take my daughter fishing this weekend. I'm going to just get out and do the things that we used to do when we were having fun.
Right.
Take some time to reconnect with family members.
Yeah, absolutely. And while you're doing that, we can get to number 4, which is hopefully not completely counterintuitive to what we've already said, but you do want to talk about your experiences.
Right.
It is very cathartic, very therapeutic to talk about your personal experiences. We've just spent 40 minutes talking about our experiences from the storms, and it's really good to talk about that. We're not talking about what else we saw on TV, or we're not kind of projecting ourselves onto somebody else or through somebody else's experiences. We're talking about our experiences, and that's really important.
And even here, where we have had this little banter, every once in a while you laugh about something.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to do. You need to get rid of all this stuff, unload it on people who are willing to listen, and just ventilate. Just get rid of it, because that's a very effective way of relieving some of the anxiety and stress you've been feeling. It's just get rid of it. It's been building up over several days, almost a week now. It has been a week today.
Yeah.
So go ahead and ventilate. Get rid of it.
Yeah, we laugh about the video that I have of my son riding a ripstick on the back patio during the storm.
I picture you on the rocker that's right.
With a little piece of straw hanging out of my mouth.
Banjos playing.
Yeehaw. So you do want to talk about it and sort
ventilate.
of ventilate.
Right.
The podcast that came out actually today on the 15th was venting versus dumping.
That's right. You're not dumping.
Venting is okay.
Yeah, you're not dumping on people, but you have to ventilate. And in venting, as people talk about it, almost invariably it starts to become humorous. They'll say about some silly thing that happened or some stupid thing there, or what they're not going to do. And people are saying, well, I ain't going to ride out the next one. I'm going to Disney, or I'm going here, I'm going there. And you find a way to be a little bit humorous, and that relieves some of the tension. Right.
Absolutely.
So please vent.
And then number 5 is get back to normal.
Right.
You got it. The faster you can get your life back to normality, the better. We were talking before we started recording that on Monday and Tuesday, when we spent most of our time at home.
Right, Monday in particular, because of the cleanup.
Right, Monday in particular. It was really difficult. I mean, I found myself, certainly we did all the cleanup and everything. I found myself wanting to stay in bed, wanting to just sleep, which is certainly a stress response.
Right, and the last thing you want to think about is work.
Right.
I mean, you have so much to do in your house.
Right.
I mean, there's food to consider, and refrigeration is lost, and you have to clean up your yard and put things back together.
Right.
You had moved your porch furniture, and
it's
so much to do, and you think,
I'm doing all that was done.
Right.
And then, and so, for me, a little bit on Tuesday, and then certainly on Wednesday.
Right.
Getting back to a normal routine, getting back to work a little bit, and it just really helped get things back to normal.
Yes,
and the faster you can get your life back to normal, get back to your work routines, back to your exercise routines, back to your sleep routine. Right. Stop eating all that junk food that I know everybody bought.
Not allowed to eat any more potato chips.
Right. I know we all bought that stuff because it will last, because it has so many other things in it, so that it will never spoil.
That's right. You can
move away from that stuff and start moving back into your healthier diet and everything. All of that stuff is going to go back to number one, which is going to reduce stress, but it's going to get your life back to normal, which is so important.
I started feeling better as soon as I came back to work.
Yeah. And it's not that we don't want to be with our family. Well,
no. Well, we don't need to be. I mean,
right.
they're safe now and everything's okay.
Yeah.
We're helping out with the cleanup and all that stuff. It's not like that's your work to do.
Yeah.
But no, getting back to work was the quickest way, is the quickest way. Getting back to your normal routines, whether it's work or getting ready for work. I know teachers are planning to go back to school. So you begin to get back in that normal routine. You'll be surprised how much better you feel moving back into your regular sleep, nutrition, exercise, work, the normal things that you do. Get back to normal as soon as you can.
Yeah. And I know that if you've been sitting home since last Friday or Saturday,
right.
It feels like, I don't want to go back to work. It will get back to normal. It will feel normal very quickly.
Right. And you're going to see other people who feel, when you go back to work, you're going to find other people who feel exactly the same way.
Right.
Nobody wanted to go back. But being back is another excellent way to separate yourself from this event.
Right.
Okay. Get back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. So reduce stress, reflect on the positives, spend some positive time with your family, talk about it sort of in a healthy way, and then get back to your routines.
Right.
That should be a nice sequence there to help you get back to normal, to get back and recover from all this hubbub. In time for Jose.
I ain't doing it again. You said that earlier. I am not doing it again. I'm going to close up my house, board it up, and head to Washington,
I'm going to mount the webcam and just record the whole thing. That'll be awesome.
That would be better than sitting out there.
It's hard when you're holding your phone trying to record it.
That's right. And it always happens at night. The last couple. Why does it always happen at night?
Yeah.
Jeez.
True.
I mean, I'd like to watch some of this stuff in the daytime.
It is.
At least you could see it coming.
Fascinating stuff. I'll have to post that one picture that I had from us playing soccer last Friday night. And you could see the front coming in, one of the early waves coming
clearly demarcated.
It was awesome. Right. It was really awesome. So
great picture.
We were teasing that we were going to, and this of course was a complete joke and everything. We were joking that depending on when the eye came through, and this was back when we thought the eye was going to come right over us. And then after that is when we thought it was going to go more west. And then after that was when it actually did come over us. We were joking that we were going to go have soccer practice during the eye of the storm.
Yeah, sneak out during the eye.
Awesome. That would have been so cool.
The eye is an interesting event.
The eye is a really neat
when it gets real calm.
Everything stops.
And you think it's over.
And you look out there and you can see the wall. Right. And I saw that with one of those storms in 2004. Because that was during sort of time where it was sort of early evening, so you could still see.
One of them was during the day. Yeah. Because I remember my girls went outside during the eye, and they were pretending to be weather forecasters, hurricane people. And they went out during the eye, and then they rushed back in, and we did the second half of the storm.
Yeah. So folks, we're glad to be back. Right. We're glad that we're safe. We hope that all of you are safe. If you need anything, like I said, please contact us. We know that this is a tough thing to go through, so please contact us. We're here. We're willing to talk. That's a lot of the people that we've been talking about. Of course, it's been the major subject of conversation over the past few days in our sessions with patients and stuff. So we are available and willing to help if we can.
Let us know. There's plenty of help out there. I mean, it's been impressive, the amount of rebuilding and help that is available. So don't do it yourself. There's plenty of help. So.
Yeah. And over the past week, this is just sort of preparation stuff. Over the past week, we've been talking about a few minor, moderately sized changes that we're going to be making to the podcast. We're looking at some new things that we're going to be doing, and so you may see some of those changes as early as next week.
Right. I'm kind of looking forward to it.
He's not as
kind of looking forward
as eager about change. It's okay. Accepting it is It's a good thing.
I have to separate myself from him periodically.
I like reaching over and touching your shoulder because I know it's like, we matched today. So, all right.
Oh, we do.
Is that it?
Yeah. That's it.
Folks, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Glad to be back.
Yeah.
Getting back to normal.
If you are listening to this on the day that it comes out, which is Saturday the 16th, or even Sunday the 17th, or even Monday the 18th, Monday night, we are recording live our movie review of A Monster Calls.
A Monster Calls.
So we'll post the link to that. We'll be posting that through Twitter and everything, so that you can check it out. Join us in the conversation. It's going to be a live YouTube event, so you can chat with us while we're talking about it. It's gonna be fun. I can't wait to talk about it because it's a really
lovely
interesting movie.
I can't wait to watch. I can't wait to do this one.
Yeah,
really good. Really good.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story about a boy dealing with a lot of stress and everything, in an interesting way to sort of depict some of that. So, but we'll talk about that.
Timely topic.
So, all right. So that is it for today and this week. So until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.